David, so good to have you here. So many things I want to talk to you about. How about we start with how did you become a fan? Do you remember what you first heard, a first song, a first album? Let's start there. Do you recall any of that?
Yeah, well, it's funny. My aunt was a gigantic Rolling Stones fan, and I remember I would go over to her house as a kid, and she'd always lean down and say, "Who's the greatest rock and roll band in the whole wide world?" And I knew I was supposed to say the Rolling Stones, but that was like all the context I had. I didn't really know the music or who Mick Jagger or Keith Richards were, or any of that. And then it took me a long time, but eventually in the late '80s, I started getting into hot rocks, and I'm like, you know what? I like every song on this Greatest Hits compilation. Big shock. And then I started really getting into them, and then my aunt got me a ticket for opening night Steel Wheels tour in Philadelphia, and I went and instantly became a fan that night. I had never seen anything like that my entire life. We had nosebleed seats all the way in the back. And, the pyrotechnics go off as they take the stage to start me up. From all the way back there, I still felt this blast of heat. And from then on, lifelong fan, and they can do no wrong in my eyes.
Oh, man, you're so lucky to be at that show, because I've heard and read so many, reports about that show. And could you recall the vibe of the crowd? Because that was a big show, right? Because this was after that World War III for them.
Exactly, yeah. Nobody thought that the Stones, they thought that after they didn't tour on Dirty Work, and they were doing their solo careers, that the Stones were finished, they were done, they were never going to reunite. And then it's funny to think, this is only 3 years after that. But I just remember, and of course I didn't have a sense of all that history at that night, when I was going there, but I just remember, and I'd only been to like 2 concerts before this night. I'd been to the Monkees and Neil Diamond, and it was pretty tame, and I'm walking up to Veterans Stadium with my aunt for the Stones, and everyone's like already drunk before the show starts, and they're like, people are yelling and screaming. I'm like, oh, this is a different kind of vibe. And of course you could smell all the stuff in the air. I just remember winding up the ramps of Veterans Stadium all the way to the top, taking my seat. And yeah, I was a little bummed because the opening act was in Living Color, and my aunt didn't want to see them, but I really liked them. Cult of Personality. She didn't want to see those, so I missed them. But yeah, we take our seats, and it was just so much excitement in the air. And yeah, like they lost power in the third song during Shattered, but it didn't matter. Like we were all just like mesmerized, and actually the time that it took them to get the power back wasn't all that long, but yeah, just an incredible show and night.
I have heard that recording of that night, and you could hear just go like someone pulled the plug on the whole thing.
Yeah. And then they just go off the stage. It's like, is that it?
Oh, so they did go off the stage.
They did.
Oh, okay.
They did.
I've always wondered.
Yeah, they were gone, and I was like confused. I didn't quite know what was happening, and no one can tell you anything. There's no power to tell you. But eventually, Mick took the stage. It was probably like 10, 15 minutes later or something. And he said, sorry, we lost power there for a bit. And I guess they had found some nearby company that had dry ice, and they just because the equipment had overheated. That's why they lost power. They put dry ice all on the equipment. They got the power back, and thank God the rest of the show went on without a hitch.
That's hilarious. And my understanding was they didn't play Shattered for the rest of the tour.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's like, we're in a baseball. That's where the Phillies used to play, and there's a lot of superstition in baseball, and I guess there's a lot of superstition in the Stones concerts too. So yeah, they didn't bring it back, and they did. The one other bump was they did a pretty terrible version of One Hit to the Body, which is one of my favorite songs, even though it's off a not great album. But no, Keith didn't quite have the rhythm to it that night.
Oh, that's hilarious to hear that, because there's only 1 or 2 taped performances on YouTube of that song, and one of the times Keith struggled even then with getting that intro right. So it sounds like even First Night Jitters wasn't helping.
I think that might have been it, yeah.
Oh, you're so lucky to hear that song live, though, I tell you.
For real, I love that song. It's like you can there's a lot of filler tracks to me on Dirty Work, but that is not one of them. And they were right to release that as a single. And
people, you can say what they want about Dirty Work, but we would not have gotten that song probably otherwise. So hell, we'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever we can get.
now that's an iconic first show to go to. Would you say that's your favorite of all the times you've seen them?
I mean, it has a special place in my Stones heart because it was the first, but And what's really frustrating about it, when I look back at the set list and the night I got, as big a deal as it was to me that night, I look back, I'm like, oh, that was an even better show than I really realized at the time. Because Play with Fire, you got that, and I don't think I got Factory Girl that night, but that tour had Factory Girl. I mean, there's so many really great songs that you just don't do anymore.
2,000 Light Years from Home.
Oh, incredible. Painted Black, like before now we get Painted Black like almost all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure the crowd was going nuts for all the songs, but do you remember any big reaction to any one particular song that the crowd was like, holy shit?
Sympathy for the Devil. And it's a funny thing. Memory's a funny thing. I have a memory of Sympathy for the Devil that contradicts what I've since found on YouTube. So obviously the YouTube version is the accurate version, but I remember Sympathy for the Devil was a really like it got a big crowd reaction because they start the drums, and then when Mick comes in with his lead vocal, he's at the top of the Veterans Stadium, big spotlight on him, and it's unexpected. It's very theatrical, and that was just a gigantic moment that everybody was just like, whoa, in my mind, my 15-year-old mind was blown.
That's so good. Yeah, it's quite an image. That'll be with you forever to have them up there. Yeah. That wasn't the only time you saw them, right? You had some other fantastic shows that you saw them at.
Yeah, I've seen them 14 times. But in 2013, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to get a front row seat. I got a pit ticket, May 2013 for the 15 Counting tour, I believe that is. And I got there early in the morning, and I lined up, and sure enough, I was able to enter the pit early enough to, secure a spot in the front. And this guy that had done it a bunch told me, like, don't do Keith's side, do Ronnie's side, because Keith will oftentimes just hang back by the drum kit, which I kind of knew, but it's like, you don't think about it when you're front row, like how that would sort of suck. And Ronnie's like obviously more interactive with the crowd. And I remember this one moment, he flicked a pick and it sailed past my head and it hit Aaron Paul in the forehead behind me.
That's an LA crowd.
It is an LA crowd. Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. So, what's great about the front row is that you can study the band, you can study the goings on, and you can notice things that you can't notice otherwise. So it's great for Stones nerds, right, to be right up front.
That was my experience. It was the first time that I ever really saw the relationships on stage at a Stones concert. And it was during One More Shot, Keith's contribution to that compilation. And he made a mistake. I haven't really gone back and tried to figure out what that mistake was, but I could tell he made a mistake. And it was like this weird thing where he's at the mic and he realizes that he's made a mistake, but he can't just stop in the middle. And he kind of like makes eyes at Mick and gives him this almost like puppy dog, like hurt puppy dog look. I'm like, what? You're Keith Richards. What are you doing? And then Mick whips around, makes eyes with Chuck Leavell, and Mick rolls his eyes. It's like, can you believe this guy? But honestly, it felt... I think they're really excellent. What's that?
I love that.
Oh, yeah. No, I think they're really excellent. First of all, they make a lot of mistakes all the time, but they're really excellent at recovering from them. And I honestly find the mistakes kind of endearing, as a fan. But
yeah, it's almost built into the music.
Yeah, it is. That's what I love about it, where it feels like at any moment it could fall apart. And there's that tension there. And that's what makes it so exciting.
And, I don't want to get too psychological about it, but for me, the underlying reason why I love it and why I might necessarily not like it with other bands necessarily, at least with the Stones, when those mistakes happen, it reminds you that they and we, the audience, we're all present for this thing that's happening right now. It's all happening in the moment, and it is what it is, and it's the beauty of the now, the right now.
That really is. That's it entirely. That's a great way to phrase it, because there are other bands, I won't throw them under the bus, but some older acts who, they pretend that they're playing piano, but they're not actually playing piano. It's like you're paying to see like a lip sync, which is insane, and that's not the Stones. Yeah.
Now, the show you were at there, that was the second LA show.
Second. The front row experience was the second night of that LA visit. I was actually at the first night as well, but that was in the back. But I want to say you were at that show, right?
Now, yeah, and it's so funny because that was, I think, the first tour they did this Lucky Dips thing, where
Yes.
yeah, and so I was all about that, and I said, you know what. The universe loves me. The universe is going to reward me for something, And so I was the first person in line at one of the windows. They have. Well, actually, no. There was only one window that they were handing out the Lucky Dips, actually, right? And
Yeah.
I was the first person there at 5 a.m, and I stayed there. Because my rationale was, well, surely they're going to reward the first person there with a great ticket, and it wasn't so. I was all the way in the back. So to have seen, it was still fine, especially to listen to the first ever Emotional Rescue live.
That was my biggest takeaway from that night. Because like having been to 14 shows, and it wasn't 14 at that time, that was probably like 10, 11, somewhere in there for me. But yeah, we've seen a lot of the similar set lists in the last 20 years. Not a lot changes, and there's staples that have to be there. And so it doesn't make a lot of room for some surprises. But when that song, and I was not expecting that, when that song came on, I'm like, there was so much, I'm sure you felt this, so much energy in the crowd for it. And Mick seemed really into it. And Dow Jones just fantastic on bass for that. And even Keith looked like he was enjoying himself. And I don't even think he likes that song. But yeah. It was a fun, memorable moment for that show.
I was happy to confirm, because this is what happens in this day and age, right? You go to a show and you can see the video of it later online. And at the time at the show, I could have sworn that there was a big reaction from the crowd when Mick announced Emotional Rescue. And you look at the video, and there was. So it's like take that, Mick. You think we don't know these obscure songs, and of course we do.
And that's what it is, isn't it? It's sort of like an insecurity on his part, where he's going to bore the crowd, which I respect that, he's an entertainer, but I think that I wish he took a few more chances and risks like that than he does.
Yeah, absolutely. But
and in a way, by the way, sorry to interrupt.
No,
I was just thinking, like, they took Brown Sugar out of the set list, this current era, and I'm like, that's kind of good. We can like stick something else in there that we haven't heard in a while.
I know, exactly. I mean, that's like when they did the No Security tour and they didn't play Satisfaction on that tour. People were like, whoa. But, it was a good payoff. They played a lot of great songs on that tour.
Totally. Yeah.
But that second LA show, now that is a magical evening. Wasn't that a magical night? I mean, I've spoken about that show on this channel, on a video focused on Mick Taylor, because that was kind of like a Mick Taylor show. That show was as close as we can get.
Yeah, it's like, that tour, and as they often do, they'll have like special guests, and each night it was a different special guest. I think the first night you and I, the show we had for Emotional Rescue, that was Keith Urban and Gwen Stefani, I think. And so, but for that second LA show, the special guest was Mick Taylor. And I said to that guy I referenced earlier, I'm like, this is who I would want the special guest to be. Like that honestly is my favorite lineup of the band. Not a hot take, obviously, but this, like, what Keith does on rhythm and what Mick Taylor does on solo. I know, obviously, I love Ronnie Wood too, and that the Ancient Art of Weaving that they do. That's great too. But I love that 68 to 72 era Stone, the best for me. And it was a really magical night. And we got Can't You Hear Me Knocking? We got Sway. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I've spoken about that moment during the show when you could feel, I mean, maybe this is the first time I've actually spoken to another person from that show as well. Now, I mean, I'm building it up in my mind that there was an extra, fairy dust in the air, that we were all sort of leaning in as an audience, thinking like, okay, surely they're going to be doing something crazy for this. This is our second show. It wasn't in a row per se, because there was like a week between the first LA show and the second LA show, I think it was, right? But
actually a long time. Might have even been 3 weeks. It was the same month, but it was a big chunk of time.
Yeah. And so you sense that Mick Taylor's here, and I think no one wanted to say it, but in the back of our mind, we thought, wouldn't it be nice if they could pull out Can't You Hear Me Knocking? And I swear to God, when that opening riff came, like I've said in the past, the whole place lifted about a foot. It was magical.
Yeah, it really was. And I wish I could get that. I mean, it probably exists somewhere, like a BitTorrent or whatever, but I would love to get that show on audio, just to have that. as well as all the shows I've been to, frankly.
That's another case where, and by the way, I'll send you the audio of the. It's a great show. But
oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's both the video and the audio online. It does the moment justice because I don't know if you remember it, but like, because I remember as the song was starting, people around me were like high fiving and like holding the other person they were with. Like, I can't believe. And the moment the song ended, it was as if there was a touchdown. It's as if it was like the last basket of the game, and because it was like, you guys did it, like you nailed it, you know.
That's exactly what I felt. And in fact, I even thought, I don't know if I ever want to go to another Stone show, because I don't think it could get better than this. Like, this is as good as it can get. I ended up going to a bunch more, but
that's our job, isn't it?
It is.
Oh, that's fantastic. Any other memories of being front row and being at that show?
Well, I remember, I was really, I mean, this is probably too much information, but I was trying to strategize, like, how am I going to make this happen? Because I went by myself out there. There was no one else I could convince to, shell out that kind of money for that seat or that standing room. And so I was like, okay, well, like I gotta stay in the front row, and I can't go to the bathroom. If you go to the bathroom, you lose your spot. So I'm like, I can't have a drop of water, no beer. And I'm like, should I wear a diaper? I was like trying to figure out, because I just didn't want to give up that 2-hour window in the front. And I made it okay without a diaper, but I was thirsty after, for sure.
People don't realize, and I'm sure every band's fans who are up front have to deal with this problem. But it's whenever I have to do a front row thing, especially for the Stones, it's like a Zen-like thing you have to prepare yourself for the daytime, right? Because you can't eat, or you're going to make sure you're prepared before you go in. It's a
exactly.
It's like you're training for a marathon or something.
It really is that. Yeah. You just want it to go so perfectly. And, by the way, I got to mention this too. One of the other really special moments of that night for me was, as you say, you're there like early in the morning, and you're just waiting all day, and they eventually let you in, and you're the first in, and there's no one even in the stands yet, and we're just hanging out in the pit. There's like, I don't know, 25 of us or something, and then Charlie comes out before the show starts just to check his kit, and it's hard in my memory now to judge the distance, probably like 50 feet away from us or something, but he's right there, and it's just him, and we're all like yelling at him, and I think he gave us like one sheepish wave. I was hoping he would like come up to the front and say hi, but of course that's not Charlie, But yeah, it was so cool just watch him like kind of check his kit, tighten stuff, and then okay, it's good. He gets up, he goes backstage, and waits another probably 2 hours before the show starts.
That's an amazing memory to have. That I mean, to see him in his ultimate, nerdism there of like, oh, before the show, got to check my instrument. I mean, come on. He's got people to do that. He's got a crew, yet he's out there himself.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, and I think that was the last show that I saw him behind the kit with the Stones, because I think the next time I saw them was 2019, and he was supposed to be on that tour, but of course he got sick, and Steve Jordan filled in with this idea that eventually Charlie Watts was going to come back, but of course he never did. And so it's special in that way too for me personally.
Absolutely. Well, David, I understand you're a TV writer, and I understand that while working on the show Family Guy, you were part of a major Stones connection on the show. Is that right? Yeah.
Well, this was not my idea, but a lot of people might be surprised or not by this, but a lot of like TV writing in a writer's room is watching YouTube videos that have nothing to do with the job. And I remember like the David Bowie, Mick Jagger covers, Dancing in the Streets, the music video was something that was being talked about a lot. I forget who brought it up. I can't give them credit because I don't remember, but it would just come up a lot, and we would watch it and laugh and like, this is ridiculous, just like the dancing and just the over the top performance of it, the mugging. And Mick Jagger, so hammy. As if I don't think he could get hammier than he is in that video. And I mean, I love it. And eventually someone pitched, let's just put that music video for Dancing in the Street in an episode and show the entire thing. and I think Peter Griffin's joke at the end is after we watched is like, that happened and we all let it happen. But hey, I'm glad it happened. I love that music video.
I remember watching that and just being floored that this was even happening, because at any moment, like, typical Family Guy style, you expect it to just stop, abruptly somewhere. But no, it just wonderfully keeps going.
And then, that eats up like 3 minutes of real estate in an episode. That's not a small amount of time. And I think that premiered during Live Aid, right? 1985. I think that's they dropped that video anyway. But yeah, iconic, and we're all better for it.
I've always wondered. So there was no other music video in the running. It was always that because it was already in the zeitgeist.
It was always going to be that. Yeah, they weren't like, okay, we want to do this bit where we show an entire music video. What could it be? It's like, no. It started with, we'd watched it probably a dozen times up to that point, and it's like, let's just put this in an episode. It's got to go in.
Oh, fantastic. Well, bravo. Congratulations for being part of a very historic moment in TV history. Well, before we go, David, I have this segment we call Crossfire Questions, where I have about 5 or 6 questions that I'm going to throw at you. Feel free to just spit out the first idea or answer that comes to your head. There's no wrong answers here. So are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Here we go. Pick one Stone song for the rest of your life.
Ooh. Oh, that's really good. Okay, I'll just say it. You can't always get what you want.
Wow, very nice. Okay. You get to hang out with a Stone, living or dead. Who is it?
Oh, it's Keith Richards. No, bar none.
Bring a couple of guitars, some joints. Why not? That sounds fun.
I would love that.
Your favorite song to dance to?
To dance to? Ooh, that's a good one. I actually kind of like Dancing to Start Me Up, which I know is not really a dance song per se, but yeah, you can rock out to that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can out Mick.
Yeah, exactly.
Least favorite album?
That's got to be Dirty Work. Everybody would probably say like Satanic Majesty's Request, but I think that holds up better than Dirty Work does.
Mm-hmm. That's controversial. Dirty Work at the bottom of the list. Wow, people are going to be revolting for this one, I'm sure. Your favorite Stones solo album?
Let's give that a tie between Talk Is Cheap and Wandering Spirit.
Yes, very nice. Love it. And last but not least, best ever Keith riff.
Okay, Jumpin' Jack Flash. Yeah. Although I guess technically we have to say that's a Bill Wyman riff, I think, if we're following our history, but whatever.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, David. Really appreciate it. This was fun.
Thanks so much. Great talking to you, man. Thanks for having me on.